Most side hustles are built on manual execution. The owner does the work, every piece of it, every client interaction, every deliverable, every administrative task surrounding the delivery. And that's appropriate in the beginning. The early stage is about understanding the work, what the client needs, what the delivery requires, what the process actually looks like when it's done well. But what starts as necessary participation often stays as permanent participation. Not because the owner couldn't delegate or automate, because they never stopped to examine which parts of the work required them specifically and which parts were just execution that happened to be done by them. Every manual task has two properties: how much time it takes and whether it requires the owner's specific judgment. Some tasks are high judgment: the strategic decision, the client relationship management, the creative direction, the quality assessment. These tasks benefit from the owner's presence. They produce better outcomes because the owner specifically is doing them. Other tasks are low judgment: the scheduling, the follow-up email, the invoice generation, the file organization, the repetitive parts of the delivery that follow the same pattern every time. These tasks don't benefit from the owner's presence. They just require presence because nobody has set up the system that does them without it. Every hour spent on low judgment tasks is an hour not spent on high judgment ones, not just in terms of productivity, in terms of what gets built. The owner who spends their available hours on administrative execution has less capacity to develop the product, build the relationship, improve the delivery, or systematize the process. The hustle stays exactly as it is because the owner's hours are consumed keeping it running rather than building it into something that runs differently. This is the core cost of a hustle without systems. Not just the wasted time on individual tasks, the opportunity cost of what those hours could have built instead. The ceiling created by manual execution isn't obvious until it's been hit. In the early stage, the owner has capacity. Not all hours are consumed. There's room to take more clients, produce more deliverables, grow incrementally. As the hustle grows, the available capacity fills. More clients, more deliverables, more administrative overheads surrounding each. And eventually, the owner is at capacity. Every available hour is committed. The hustle is at its maximum output given the structure it's running on. Not a market ceiling, not a capability ceiling, a time ceiling. The hustle can't grow further without the owner working more hours, which aren't available, or without changing the structure. Changing the structure is what systems do, not by removing the work, but by changing who or what does it. The system handles the low judgment task. The owner's hours are freed. Those hours can go toward the high judgment work that builds rather than the low judgment work that maintains. The hustle doesn't grow faster because the owner is working more hours. It grows differently because the hours are now going toward the work that actually changes the ceiling rather than the work that hits it. Before this continues, if you felt seen instead of sold to, that's the entire point of Relentless Wealth. Like the video, subscribe. We're just getting started. Systems are commonly understood as time-saving tools. Set up the automation, save the hours, do more with less. That framing is accurate, but it misses the more important economic effect. Systems don't just save time, they change the cost structure of the business. And a changed cost structure produces different economic properties, different relationships between revenue and cost that change what the business is capable of. In a hustle without systems, every unit of output has a variable cost. More output requires more time. More time costs more, whether in the owner's hours or in the hours of people paid to deliver. The cost structure is variable. It scales with the output, which means the margin stays roughly constant as the business grows. A system converts variable costs into fixed ones. The system is built once. The cost of building it is incurred once, or periodically as it's maintained and improved. After that, the system handles an expanding volume of output at roughly the same cost. The 10th use of the system costs the same as the first. The 100th use costs the same as the 10th. Revenue grows with volume. Cost stays roughly flat. Margin expands. This is the economic transformation systems produce, not just efficiency within the existing structure, a different structure, one where growth improves the economics rather than leaving them flat. Consider the difference concretely. A hustle owner who manually onboards every client spends 2 hours per client on onboarding. At 10 clients, 20 hours. At 20 clients, 40 hours. The cost scales linearly with the client count. The same owner who builds an automated onboarding system, a sequence of emails, a self-serve intake form, a recorded walkthrough of the process, spends those 2 hours once to build it. At 10 clients, roughly 2 hours total. At 20 clients, roughly 2 hours total. At 50 clients, roughly 2 hours total. The revenue from onboarding those clients scales with the count. The cost of onboarding them doesn't. The margin on each client's onboarding improves as volume grows. The system produced a different economic relationship between volume and cost. This economic shift compounds over time. A hustle that systematizes its repetitive processes, one by one, over months and years, gradually converts its variable cost base into a fixed one. The business grows, the revenue grows, the costs grow more slowly, the margin expands. And the expanding margin funds the next layer of systematization, which expands the margin further, which funds the next layer. Systems compound the same way capital compounds. Each layer of systematization makes the next layer more accessible and more impactful. Most hustle owners understand that systems save time. Fewer understand that systems change economics. And the ones who understand the economic shift, who build systems not just to free hours, but to change the cost structure of what they're building, build something that scales differently from the hustle that stays manual. Not just bigger, more profitable per unit of output, more capable of sustaining growth without the owner's hours expanding proportionally. The time saved is the visible benefit. The economic transformation is the real one. The end state of systematization, if it's pursued deliberately enough, is an income profile that looks different from where it started. Not completely passive, that's rarely real, but partially decoupled. Some portion of the revenue arriving without the owner's active involvement in each specific transaction. And that partial decoupling, even when it's small, changes what the business structurally is. The income profile of a fully manual hustle is presence-dependent. Every dollar requires an action, a delivery, an hour, a decision, something the owner specifically did. The income profile of a systematized hustle is different. Some dollars arrive because of actions taken now. Some dollars arrive because of systems built and deployed earlier that are now running without continuous input. The marketing automation that nurtures leads while the owner sleeps. The onboarding sequence that converts new clients without manual follow-up. The delivery system that produces the output without the owner personally executing each step. Each of these generates revenue from infrastructure built earlier, not from hours invested now. The shift in income profile changes the owner's relationship with time. In a fully manual hustle, time off is revenue lost. Every hour not working is an hour not earning. In a partially automated hustle, some revenue continues during the hours the owner isn't working. Not all of it. The high judgment work still requires presence. The strategic decisions still require the owner. The relationships still require cultivation. But the portion of revenue that comes from systematized processes, from the infrastructure built to handle what doesn't require the owner specifically, arrives without the owner being there. And that portion represents the beginning of a structurally different income stream, one that compounds towards something the manual hustle could never become. The automation doesn't have to be complete to change the economics. A hustle that automates 20% of its processes hasn't automated itself. It's freed 20% of the owner's time. That time goes back into the business, into the high judgment work, into building the next layer of systematization, into acquiring the next client or developing the next product. And the next layer of automation frees more time, which funds more building, which produces more automation. The process is slow, but it's directional. Each layer moves the income profile further from full presence dependence and closer to something that runs without requiring the owner for every dollar it generates. Most hustle owners never reach this point, not because it's inaccessible, because the urgency of the current work always crowds out the building of the next layer. There's always a client to serve, always a deliverable due, always something that needs the owner's attention right now, that feels more pressing than setting up the system that would eventually make right now easier. The manual hustle creates the conditions that prevent it from becoming anything else. Breaking that pattern requires a deliberate decision to invest time in systems, not when it's convenient, because it's never convenient, but as a protected priority alongside the delivery work that keeps the income flowing. The owner who does both, who delivers today and builds the system for tomorrow, ends up somewhere different from the one who only delivers. Subscribe if this is the kind of thinking you want more of. Like this if something shifted.